Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly. As we hear from John and Waiting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. It is John Pollock and Wei Ting here with you on a Wednesday night, April the 3rd. Hello, Wei.
Hey, John. Welcome. Welcome to your third show of the day.
Welcome to your second, I guess. Yeah,
my second.
Okay.
It's I got a lot to catch up on. Yes.
You know, when it actually feels like. So we did our show today on the Bray Wyatt documentary, and if you had just told me we did that yesterday, I don't think I would have questioned it at all. That does not feel like that was this morning. It was
about 12 hours ago.
It was a fair distance. I like that show a lot. It was
me too.
Yeah, we spent 45 minutes or so talking about the Bray Wyatt documentary, and then also some quick thoughts on the Harley Race Dark Side of the Ring episode from Tuesday night. And Wei, you got to see the Roman Reigns A&E documentary, so you chatted a bit about that, but primarily we focused on the Bray Wyatt doc. But if you want to catch that special return of the double shot, we thought this warranted it, and that's up on the cafe for everyone.
Yeah, some of these things might be going on a little bit under the radar just because so much is happening this week and so much has already happened this week. But you know, I would say all three were worthy of at least a little bit of discussion. But we do spend the majority essentially talking about the career of Bray Wyatt, which, you know, this documentary kind of gave us an excuse to kind of dive deeper into.
Yeah, so you can check that out. PostWrestlingCafe.com is your place to be this week. We are going to be checking in daily from Philadelphia, beginning. Well, Thursday night, we're going to the Mark Hitchcock Memorial Show. So we will definitely be doing a show probably Friday morning, sometime after the Memorial Show. So we'll talk about that show. Friday night, we're going to Supercard of Honor, and then 2 nights of WrestleMania. We've got a media day in there.
And in between all the time, at least I feel like I'm going to try to catch up on all the matches that people might be talking about throughout the weekend. So, you know, we are going to do our best to try to cover it all, but we won't be alone. John Cena will be down there. He'll be giving us little mini reviews throughout the week as well. For all the patrons over at postwrestlingcafe.com of all the shows that he's attending, WH Park and Rich Fan are going to Stardom, and they might be checking in from there as well. So we're going to try to really give everybody a real sort of like full scope of all the notable events that are down there, not to mention all the writing that's going to be taking place at postwrestling.com.
Yes, we have got the best in the business. We got Andrew Thompson, Jack Wanon, Neil Flanagan. I told him, Neil, you're not allowed to go to WrestleMania. I'm grounding you back home to stay home this weekend. And Neil's like, I really want to go to WrestleMania, Pollock. I said, absolutely not, Neil. You've got to stay home. You've got work.
No,
Neil,
you did not say that.
Yeah,
I hope he's not working, man. Because
no, I don't know what his plans are. Neil,
he's
supposed to come, and he's unable to come for non-work reasons.
Yeah. I don't know how much he wants revealed, but like anyway, he's sick, which I think he's fine with, like, you know, saying. But it's just the worst timing to get sick, you know, because he was really looking forward to this one. So, you know.
It just means we'll have to FaceTime him at some ungodly hour for him at like 5 a.m. his time.
It means he's delaying the journey so he can finish the story next year. That's all it means.
Okay, that is it. So
yeah,
we wish our good pal Neil all the best. Also today, Wei mentioned I did a few shows today. In the middle of them was Pollock and Thurston. I was very happy with this show. A lot of work went into this one this week, and just kind of by just various things coming together for this show. But we had Ann Callis on the program to talk about the status of the case. She is the lawyer representing Janelle Grant, and she gave us quite a bit of information in this interview that we did, just sort of reacting to the letter that was published in the New York Post this past Monday, and sort of how that's been interpreted by the public and what their perspective on the letter is as well. And focusing on sort of how Janelle Grant is doing as well, and moving forward in that regard. We also got statements from Jessica Rosenberg, who is the lawyer representing Vince McMahon, and we got a statement from Edward Brennan, who is the lawyer representing John Laurinaitis. So I would encourage everyone to go download the show, and we also have a written version of the story up at postwrestling.com and wrestlenomics.com that you can check out. And we're going to be isolating the interview with Ann Callis later at some point this week as well for those that want to check that out. But also Matt Griffin was on the show from Action Wrestling. He is a part of the team that is putting together the Dean show in honor of Dean Rasmussen of the Death Valley Driver video review. That show is going down, one of many that is going down on Thursday. And later in the news, we'll go through some of the highlights for, I would say Thursday is kind of day one of WrestleMania week. I know some shows already begun in and around the area, but I think Thursday is the grand launch of things going on. But let's start off with Ronda Rousey. She is doing a pretty extensive book tour, and she was on News Nation, and they were focusing heavily on the aspects involving Vince McMahon. And Ronda Rousey was asked about if she has ever been subjected to any of this type of behavior. And rather than reading the comment that Ronda Rousey made, we're going to hear Ronda's comment in full for the entire context and explaining what happened to her during this alleged interaction in WWE.
Well, one time I was like waiting to go, I think, talk to like Triple H in like the writer's room or something. But I was standing there, and this guy that I was like barely an acquaintance with grabs the string of like my sweatpants as I'm walking by. This guy grabs the string of my sweatpants, and nobody else reacts as if this is abnormal, and nobody around me acted like as if it was abnormal. Like they're like, all the guys around me were just like, you know, this is part of the day. And I'm like, if this guy is coming up to me and doing this kind of stuff to me when there's other people around, like what's happening to these other girls when it's not in a hallway or something like that? So that really put me on an edge to like, not only is this like behavior prevalent, but it's so prevalent that people don't even realize it's a problem anymore. Drew Gulak. Drew Gulak. That's who it was. Yes. Yeah, I went and confronted him later, and I was like, if I ever hear about you putting like your hands on any other woman like this or doing anything like this to me ever again, we're going to have I'm editing myself all the swear words out, but we're going to have a problem. And he was like, no, you know, I'm glad that you said something to me. He's really like backpedaled and everything like that. But it just put a really sour taste in my mouth about the culture there and what's considered acceptable and how to touch and treat the women in the hallways.
All right, so that was Ronda Rousey again on News Nation involving some kind of backstage incident with Drew Gulak. Now, Drew Gulak today put out his own statement stating, backstage at a WWE event in 2022, I saw Ronda talking with a group in the hallway. I stopped to say hi and shake all their hands. And in an attempt to shake her hand, I accidentally touched her drawstring. Complete accident, and one that I had apologized to her for the mishap. And that is his statement. So, I mean, two very different perspectives on what happened here. And I mean, it's really hard to kind of, you know, what happened here. Like I don't know, like not being there, not witnessing what happened here. I mean, it's just a very strange incident, and how to interpret this is bizarre too.
Yeah. I wasn't there. Clearly, even if you were there, you could have two wildly different interpretations of it. I don't know I don't think we can definitively say whether or not there was harassment going on just based off of these accounts. At least I can't. Is it something that WWE will investigate? How do you investigate? You know, like something like this. Do you get the other people that were a part of this?
It wasn't included in the clip. Like she did mention that Bruce Pritchard was there. She alluded to other people being around, but they thought nothing of it. Again, it's like you're totally going based off of like, you know, one person's experience in this moment and the other explaining this. Now I'll say, like, going to shake someone's hand and ending up with like going for like their drawstring on their sweatpants. Like, it's bizarre. That's all I'm gonna say. It's just strange. Like, I just can't.
It's bizarre, but it's also possible. We have no idea where the hands were. Like, are we gonna be talking at that level of like, you know, discussing waist level hand versus like, you know, waist up hand? Like, what it's stupid, you know, to even try to analyze, right? This is all we have to go on. We really can't responsibly say much more than this.
That's it. I mean, it's the two sides, and that was it. But it was noteworthy story coming from Ronda Rousey today, and enough that Drew Gulak addressed it. My gut would say that's probably going to be the extent of it, but I mean, we'll see. I mean,
I'm curious to see if there's any change to what Drew Gulak might be doing on television. I guess I'm always just kind of curious if like you know, whatever like somebody believes about the story, there is an effect of PR attached to somebody, and somebody like a Drew Gulak isn't exactly somebody who can weather that sort of storm. So will the WWE act in any sort of way? Something tells me like no, because they don't feel like there's substantial proof. Again, I don't know how they'll act, but I'm at least curious to see if there is any sort of action related to his on-screen presence.
The MMA Hour, that has been the center of WWE and WrestleMania promotion this week. Their latest guest was on Wednesday with Cody Rhodes coming into studio. And so Ariel had asked him, sort of repeating what CM Punk had said about his experience in AEW, and Cody Rhodes gave his response, and we'll hear from that now about his time in AEW.
But he spoke about what it's like to work there, and in particular said, Tony's a nice guy, but he's not a boss.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assessment from your perspective working with him?
I mean, that's his assessment. It is not my assessment. It's always important for me to remind people that I am so proud of what me, Matt, Nick, Kenny, Tony, Bernie, Brandy, and Dana, and Chris, and I name all these people because I was in those meetings. As much as the internet will try to spin a narrative one way, if one of those people had not been at that startup level, the company would not have happened. And I am so proud of what was created. I am so insanely proud of what it does for the industry overall, for wrestlers and their well-being and their ability to feed their families. And I have an unbelievable love for so many people in that locker room, including the Bucks, including Kenny, who were bonded forever over this thing that we did. So it's not my assessment. In my time there, the infrastructure was just being built up. We were trying new things and doing things. It was a startup company, a big time startup company, but a startup company. And I wish them nothing but the best.
In this interview, Cody Rhodes even at one point jokingly referred to himself as Switzerland when it has come to the problems involving the Punk and the Elite. This guy is very much, I mean, is not going to say anything that is going to get too much. Like, it almost seems like it's a game in his head of like, what can I say that is both engaging in an interview setting, but is going to cause no uproar anywhere. And that's like, I mean, he's very honed in on his interview style, and you have to appreciate like what he's doing in these settings. But it was interesting to see how he weaves in like so much storyline stuff, but presents it in a sort of like out of character way, but is fully like in the story when he is talking about I'm saying more specific to the Roman Reigns and Rock stuff than this exactly. But I'm not dismissing the fact that I think he believes very much like his time in AEW, like he does have a pretty positive memory.
Sure. But that wasn't the question. The question directed to him was whether or not he agrees with CM Punk's assessment of Tony Khan's lack of leadership ability. Now, Cody did say that's not my assessment. but what exactly does that mean? What exactly does he think of Tony Khan's, aptitude as a leader? He did go on in that question to say, or in that answer to say, we were just starting to build infrastructure. Now, was that any sort of admission that like things were not up to at least the standard that WWE provides, at the time that he was there? Didn't really elaborate on that either.
I think that would be a fair characterization that they were not going to have they don't have the infrastructure of WWE today. They certainly didn't in 2019. Like, this is a company that is just starting. And I think like you can see like this is not an 800 plus employee company like WWE is. It's just not.
Right. Yeah. But beyond that, does he have any opinion on whether or not Tony could have remedied many of the problems that were going on between CM Punk and the Elite? That's maybe a follow-up I would love to hear from him eventually,
Yeah. I mean, Cody is a guy that was like, remember the fact that there was that option that Tony Khan could have invoked on Cody's contract, which he didn't. And he was able to go to WWE when he did. He could have kept him another year and didn't do that. Now you can look at that as, these two, they had their whatever. They came to a conclusion that was the time for them to go their separate ways, and he wasn't going to legally bind him to work here when he wanted to go elsewhere. But you could also look at like the business side of like, look how that turned out. I mean, you knew at the time, like, it's not great you're losing Cody Rhodes, but in hindsight, I mean, it was like, there is your tide shifting in terms of the momentum, and Cody was sort of that line of demarcation.
Yeah, but AEW also had CM Punk. They had Bryan Danielson. They had all these other, things that could have worked out just as well for them. So really, what is the line of demarcation? Like, who can you exactly play, or is it just a number of factors that just kind of resulted in what things?
I'm just saying, if everyone is looking at Tony Khan being this like stone cold business person, yeah, he could have just waited out Cody and not allowed him to go to WWE for at least another year.
Right. Oh, he's definitely not that. Yeah. I mean, he let William Regal out of his contract early.
Yeah. And it certainly, like, that is kind of my takeaway from Monday's interview with Punk. And I was interested to watch tonight's show of, is this going to be a locker room that comes out tonight, like guns blazing, and this is like a fire lit underneath them? And you pretty much started the show with like a whole like rally the troops message from Adam Copeland. Mm-hmm. But more so, I'm interested to see is that kind of interview that Tony Khan certainly had to digest and take. What is his takeaway from that? Does he respond in a certain way that this is something that's going to affect his decision making, or just any kind of response to that, or will it be indifference? Right. That's an aspect. Yeah. Thanks.
So on that note, there is a Supercard of Honor media call Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern.
Right? Yes, that is true. And they will also be doing a press conference after the show, as I understand it, on Friday night as well. So there will be plenty of opportunities for Tony Khan to speak publicly. Nick Khan did an interview on The Town with Matt Bellany, and I believe this would have been Nick Khan's first interview since Vince McMahon's resignation. And Vince McMahon did come up in the course of the interview, but it is extremely short, and we will hear that clip now.
The new allegations against Vince came out, if I remember, 4 or 5 days after the announcement of the deal. In retrospect, do you think if it had come out before, it would have killed the deal?
I don't know about killed, but it certainly wouldn't have helped the deal.
Right.
So those allegations are obviously horrific and serious, and we take them and interpret them the same way I think every other reasonable person or organization, would take them. And you saw the quick resignation.
Did Netflix tell you to do that?
No, not in any way.
Is Vince involved in any way?
No, zero.
For real?
As a stockholder, as I'm a stockholder.
Yeah.
Zero.
I just have I don't. It's hard for me to believe that guy just walks away.
Look, by the way, he chose to resign.
Yeah. Okay.
So there was no litigation, as you saw. There was no threatened litigation.
He got a lot of money too.
Yes, but by the way,
he started this.
Agreed.
Took it over, and yes, he built it to what it is.
And that was the amount covered as it regards Vince McMahon. I didn't know how much would be addressed in terms of that, but that was it is a major story, and I was curious to see how much Nick Khan would be asked about that. That was the extent of it. What did you think about his response?
I'm curious to know if like this would have been the answer like when this news broke. How long has it been now? Oh, 2 months?
Yes.
Yeah, like in the immediate aftermath of this news, this Janelle Grant lawsuit coming out, would a Nick Khan have answered this way, or would he have given maybe an answer like what Paul Levesque gave at that press conference? Because I think there's a very clear shift in TKO's sort of mandate to acknowledge Vince McMahon's separation from the company at this point, and the fact that he's no longer involved. He acknowledging that the allegations are horrific, and basically kind of making sure that the disassociation with Vince McMahon is very clear. At least that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah. You could certainly look at, like, he states that we are responding like any person would to these horrific allegations. I mean, the lawsuit paints like a very, very dark picture, but it's not like the Wall Street Journal allegations were nothing. Okay, there were some like coercion into oral sex. Like it was like there were some terrible allegations from the Wall Street Journal, and that it was
people just weren't talking about it as much.
It was
the details were not as vivid as they came to be in the lawsuit.
And he was stating, a year ago about the fact that, I think people like that when someone steps away for a couple of months, let the heat die down. And Vince was smart the way he played it and came back. And if I was Matt Bellany, I would listen, I don't believe Vince McMahon has any involvement, but I think the public and anyone asking has every right to be skeptical when this was the same tune that everyone was singing after the first resignation, that Vince isn't involved anymore. It's Paul Levesque's creative. Well, we have ample evidence now, and Ronda Rousey's book is Exhibit A of like the amount of input that Vince McMahon still had. Like there's a story like when Bruce Pritchard was running Raw, on nights when Paul Levesque wasn't there, he had 2 phones. One was when Paul Levesque would call, and one for Vince McMahon when he would call Bruce Pritchard. Like these 2 phones that were set there. Like it was not as though they were even like hiding the fact that Vince McMahon was having plenty of input. So I can understand that people are reticent to believe that Vince McMahon has no involvement, even though like there's nothing to the contrary. It's not like we're hearing whispers of like Vince being involved in any way, shape, or form, but people are going to be skeptical of that fact. And yeah, it was just interesting to see, like, this is WrestleMania week of putting someone like Nick Khan out there, who has been now listed as like corporate officer number 1. None of that came up in the interview. Like the rest of the interview, it's 30-35 minutes, and the rest is just all television deals and a lot of the stuff on Netflix and the location for this year's WrestleMania. G1, Way, are you ready for the G1?
Let's get through WrestleMania week first.
Well, they announced today 19 shows beginning July 20th with back-to-back nights in Osaka, and then the annual tournament will wrap up August 17th and 18th. So no participants yet, no format announcements, the blocks, just the dates at this point. But you can earmark 19 cards coming from New Japan. This will be a very interesting G1 this year, because I am looking at New Japan. I cannot recall a time in the last decade that my level of enthusiasm with New Japan, I don't know if it's at my lowest, but it's close to it of the past, I would say, 10, 11 years.
I think a lot of people share that sentiment right now, John. But at the same time, are you ever watching as much wrestling as you currently are, just from other sources? There's just way too much kind of on everybody's plate right now. If you're a wrestling fan, you're more than satisfied sometimes just watching one single promotion. And that leaves something like a New Japan, I think, very much struggling to try to find their space, at least in in an audience's sort of diet outside of Japan.
Yeah, and even when you mentioned the word diet, I mean, I think I'm getting an eel eating contest, and they screwed us.
Gyoza, what the hell?
I'll be honest, I didn't even watch it yet, but
Disappointed though.
I heard no reaction to it either. It's not like this was something that even seemed to grab people's attention even briefly. But there you go. New Japan schedule this summer to be determined. Let's quickly talk about at least Thursday. So these are some of the events that are happening in and around Philadelphia. WrestleCon is going down at the Sheraton in downtown Philadelphia. Again, you can go to postwrestling.com/mania. John Cena's been keeping this in pristine condition with up-to-date match announcements, show announcements, links. Defy has a card that's part of the collective at Penn's Landing. All the collective shows are on Triller TV Plus, worth noting. Some other ones here worth noting. Stardom, which is a separate pay-per-view on Triller. It's not part of the Triller TV Plus package, but that's got Micah against Megan Bayne in the main event. A high-speed championship match is on there. Willow Nightingale is teaming with Saki against Shuri and Konami. And a reunion of Club Venus with Mina Shirakawa, Mariah May, and Zaya Brookside against Mayu Iwatani, Tam Nakano, and Momo Kogo on top of that. So 5 announced matches for that Stardom show, and that looks excellent at the 2300 Arena.
One of the hot tickets, I would say, of the weekend. You know, a chance to see like a genuine Stardom show. And I know there are a lot of questions about like what sort of Stardom roster would we get? You know, post like Rousey exit. This looks like a pretty substantial, authentic Stardom roster to me.
If this did not conflict with our flight, I would have definitely been making my way to Bloodsport, but I will certainly be catching most of this afterwards. But this card,
maybe the hottest ticket, would you say, like for an indie show?
I think so. Yeah, it's been interesting that we haven't got any additional announcements of WWE talent, but I don't think that means that we won't see maybe some surprise appearances at some of these shows. But the announced card for Bloodsport is Josh Barnett against Johnny Bloodsport, Nick Nemeth against Speedball Mike Bailey, Minoru Suzuki and Royce Isaacs, Takuya Nomura against Fuminori Abe. And Abe is probably the most active professional wrestler in the world. Like every month, this guy, when Brandon Thurston does his stats, this is the most active wrestler on a monthly basis. Cool. Axel Tischer against Timothy Thatcher, Matt Makowski against Akira, Shayna Baszler versus Masha Slamovich, and Eric Hammer against Lou Nixon. And they're also doing a tournament, a one-night tournament with Lady Frost, Marina Shafir, Lindsay Snow, and Janai Kai.
Yeah, I've watched every single Bloodsport. For the most part, I enjoyed everything I've seen from Bloodsport. They always offer something like that exists very uniquely in the North American pro wrestling space. It's like shoot style is nothing new, but like now we kind of have like a quarterly or however often they do a Bloodsport type of like visiting of a shoot style promotion. And it's just fun seeing like, you know, guys like a Johnny TV, you know, adopt a new style for one night only. Certainly I'll be curious to see how Shayna Baszler looks, you know, doing something like this.
Also, go take a look at Masha Slamovich. I think she's got, I don't know the number of matches, but she could certainly have quite the week of the different matches she's doing, like intergender matches. Shayna Baszler, she's got a match with Speedball. She's doing a lot of cool matches. I think she could be one of the standouts this coming week. Then there's the Mark Hitchcock Memorial Super Show. This will be on highspots.tv at 7 Eastern at the 2300 Arena. This is the show we're going to with Rob Van Dam against Speedball Mike Bailey, Nick Nemeth against Joey Janela, Teton versus Michael Oku, a Philadelphia street fight not involving the Pride or Bobby Lash. They are the Pride.
They are the
Bobby
Pride,
Lashley
yeah.
and the Street Profits. But it will be Paul Walter Hauser against Sammy Callahan, Masato Tanaka against Josh Alexander, Mystico, Barbaro Cavernario, Star Jr., Everno, and Villano Trace Jr. against Dragon Kid, Ben K, Shun Skywalker, Yamato, and Kota Minoura. This could be the match of the weekend, potentially. And then Los Boricuas against the Full-Blooded Italians. I spoke too soon. That will be the match of the weekend.
Dream match. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then others, the Dean event, which again we chatted about on today's Pollock and Thurston. This might be the most interesting lineup. Just a total eclectic mix, like Aris against Matt Makowski, like some of the Slim J, who unfortunately was just cut this week. He's on this card. Tom Lawler, friend of the show, teaming with Manders. This should be quite the card. Dr. Cerebro against Gringo Loco. So that's on independentwrestling.tv. And then in the evening, there's the DDT show. at 8 Eastern, and then Wale Mania Thursday night, and then a GCW and JCW versus the World card at midnight. That's got Masha Slamovich against Shuri in for the JCW championship. So that's a pretty interesting card too. So there's a lot of good stuff going on just on Thursday alone.
There'll be a lot of wrestling boots.
We'll watch every single thing, Way.
I wonder if anybody's ever tried that.
I guarantee you people have.
Maybe John Cena or Katie.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So anyway, lots going on, and you can follow along postwrestling.com/mania for all the lineups, and postwrestlingcafe.com. We will be checking in many times over the coming days. And before we get to Dynamite, we should plug our meetup on Sunday at Drinkers Pub. So if you're in Philadelphia, you want to come hang out with some Post Wrestling and Poison Rana listeners, you can do so Sunday at 2:30, 1903 Chestnut Street in Philadelphia. It's Drinkers Pub, and we'll be hanging out there from 2:30 to 4:30, and it gives you plenty of time to get to Lincoln Financial Field for the second night of WrestleMania. Hope to see many of you out there, and plenty of the Post Wrestling and Poison Rana crew will be there on Sunday afternoon.
It's our first WrestleMania in what, like 5 years?
Yes, I think so. 5 years.
Who knows when our next one will be? Hopefully soon enough, but you never know. So our chance to meet a lot of our listeners we don't usually get to see.
Let's move on over to Dynamite tonight at the DCU Center in Worcester, Massachusetts. And we had an announced attendance from WrestleTix of tickets distributed 3,252, which is a big drop. The last time they ran a Dynamite in this building was July of 2022, where they drew over 6,100 people. So they were almost in half for this return a year and a half later. But Adam Copeland is out to start the show, and he gets the microphone, and man, this microphone was answering the Copeland. Looked like the microphone was going to win.
By the way, I don't know if you saw the clip. Credit John Cena for finding this, but Matt Cardona on his podcast made the same mistake. Called it
did he?
The Copeland.
He's probably just a dedicated listener, and he knows the branding that we have officially renamed this.
It must be that, but I think it rolls off the tongue way better.
It's so much easier.
Yeah.
I'm going with it for now on. So Adam Copeland comes on and talks about the negative BS being spewed this week. Screw that. But says there's a lot of positives in wrestling, even if you just go online and complain on social media. That still makes you a wrestling fan.
Oh, there are a lot of wrestling fans, especially on our Twitter comment section then. Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I grew up watching WWF, and of course, several of the fans boo. He's like, no, that's not a reason to boo. I watched everything. I watched the NWA. I watched Stampede. He's like, God damn it. I even watched Al Tomko's awful wrestling in Vancouver. He didn't take any slam at Al Tomko, but says that he loves pro wrestling. And I lost this for 9 years. And then when I came back, I realized I need to end my career in AEW. I've been part of some great locker rooms, but I would put this locker room up against anyone. And he lists off all the opponents that he has yet to have a chance to face in AEW, including Ospreay or Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega, Hangman, Swerve, and said he's having a blast here. In fact, he's having the most fun of his entire 32 years here in AEW. And he celebrates the people that started this company. I celebrate Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, even Cody, and also celebrates Tony Khan, who has pushed this industry to become a better place. AEW makes pro wrestling better. It's more fun, and it's where the best wrestle, which is their new tagline that they're going with. And he said that he asked for this time after he got fired up earlier this week, and we're moving forward. And he lists off all the recent signings and then introduce Will Ospreay, who comes out and shakes his hand. And this was kind of just your rallying cry. I would say as much of a direct response as we're going to get from AEW in regards to the Punk interview on Monday.
Right. Very much so. Yeah. It was a very interesting opening segment. Beyond, I think, that aim, there was no real storyline connection for, like, no storyline purpose for this segment. I mean, we had a tease of Malachi Black versus Adam Copeland. He did mention Malachi Black in that roll call.
Did emphasize him last, yeah. And we know that's the sixth man at the pay-per-view.
But beyond that, like really kind of nothing else. And it seems like I would agree. This was probably just at least largely put out there to answer the CM Punk interview. I thought it was a very good speech. You know, I love the sort of roll call of names. It's something I wish Mercedes did in her first promo, just to kind of give that extra boost to some of those names that are out there. And also to really just kind of like, you know, sow the seeds for some dream matches here for Adam Copeland. But I don't know if it was necessary to do this. Like, this came across to me like it was a representative of a company trying to give a consolation speech to a team that's just lost a big championship game. I know we're all on Twitter. We see a lot of discourse, especially coming off of that interview, but I don't know if the negativity was so loud that the company needed to acknowledge it in like a sort of a public statement in the opening of their show. In a way, I thought it gave legitimacy to Punk's criticisms and boosted his criticisms when there were plenty of like people who listened to that interview and didn't agree with him and did, you know, saw the other side equally. So I don't know how you felt about it, but I didn't even think it was necessary to address it in this direct fashion.
Well, it was interesting because in the first part of the interview, it felt to me like this was probably Adam Copeland's request. And then later in the promo, he pretty much says that I got the impression this was not some Tony Khan idea of utilizing somebody to respond. I imagine Adam Copeland watched that interview and was pissed off about it and wanted to do this kind of like, you know, be the captain to go out there and not trash Punk, obviously, but at least, kind of just give this positive message to all of the fans. And you're right. To a degree, it might have like just amplified more of this focus, like this company that feels like every time they get away from CM Punk, it somehow gets dragged back to CM Punk. And really through no fault of their own, on Monday, they were brought back into it because of this interview. And this interview was going to happen at some point. It just happened to be on Monday. I didn't have as much of an issue with it. Like, I don't think it was insignificant that fans watching this wouldn't know what he was talking about. I think it was known enough that what this was responding to.
But for me, it was the tone of it, where he was basically like, hey, there's been a lot of like negative talk. Can't we all just get along? Is how I sensed it. And I think it's perfectly fine for like a veteran, like an Adam Copeland, to want to stick up for the company that he's working for, especially given his ties to the WWE. He's very much, I think, still seen as, you know, a guy who spent 30 something years in the WWE and will probably always be seen to some extent a WWE guy wanting to stick up for, you know, the current promotion that he's working for. But I don't think like let's all just get along is the answer when you're talking about like,
as much as everyone complains about all the back and forth and such, believe me, there's a strong fan base that like they don't want to hear this messaging. They want to hear shots fired back. They want AEW to be in that role of like the underdog that will take their shots. The problem is, they were a much easier target 4 years ago that you could take your shots and a lot of your audience is going to be nodding in approval. It's really hard to take shots at WWE now unless you're going in a really uglier direction about things that are happening outside of the company, because the product is satisfying a lot of the fan base.
So would you have said the same for like an ECW when the WWE was going through its boom in the late 90s?
I think that I thought there came a time when you had ECW taking their shots. You'll remember, like as we got further into it, WCW was a much easier target for them at a point, and like with the WWF, it was like it was a cooler product. But you know, you also had the difference of like us being like just this company that's held together by, you know, a fraction of the budget, and AEW doesn't present itself as like this low end company that's just the scrappy underdog.
Well, but in many ways they still are an underdog, just because they are competing with, I don't know how many years, like 60, 70 years of existence versus what, 5. They're battling, trying to compete with the Kleenex of the professional wrestling. I think in many ways, like, this is an opportunity for them to continue to try to push itself, with its original underdog spirit that it had. So that's all to say, if you're going to address a CM Punk, essentially like promo, 2-hour-long promo against your company, you need to come with stronger material that I think needed to be more aggressive than, hey, let's all be positive. Let's give credit to Tony Khan. He needed to, in my opinion, step into, yes, we are the place where you can expect a 5-star match, and we are not ashamed of something like that. Just basically kind of.
Would you have actually brought up CM Punk by name in the promo? Because I think you do run the risk of suddenly you're cutting a promo and it's like you're promoting something you can't deliver to your fans if this becomes a.
I don't think you needed to. Like, he didn't need to say we all knew what he was talking about here. But I just think he needed to be a little bit more aggressive, like, for the tone of a rally cry. Because I don't know if this, to me, necessarily would have rallied anybody. Like, at least to me. Like, this felt
he really emphasized the one line that they're hitting hard, like, where the best wrestle. And that's a tagline that AEW can use. But
did the promo reflect that, though? Like, the promo was like, I came here to have matches with the roster that I would put up against anybody. I think he needed to go further than that. He should say, like, this is the best roster. And it's hard to kind of like make that argument these days because the WWE has a great roster. But I almost I wanted more of like an attitude, like in this speech.
I can get that. Yeah. Like, I think like the idea was to come out and just really, I think they really took this as this was a big public hit that they took, and I really didn't read that on.
I didn't
Monday.
either.
I didn't think like this was somebody that was, there are certainly going to be people that agree with his points, but to your point, there were plenty that disagreed with other aspects, and I think that.
All the Punk supporters were just going to be more Punk supporters afterwards, and all the AEW supporters were probably, maybe, I don't know if it necessarily made them like AEW more, but I don't think it would have necessarily turned them off. But I could be wrong. I'd love to hear what people, our listeners, thought about this promo itself.
So Will Ospreay's out, and that takes us to the Powerhouse Hobbs match with Don Callis on commentary, and. It was Hobbs taking a lot of the first half of this match. He is beating down Ospreay as Callis is explaining that Ospreay is still part of the Don Callis family. And then Ospreay manages a stun dog and goes for the Os cutter, but he is stopped with a lariat to the back of the head. Hobbs climbs to the top and misses a frog splash. And the Os cutter, he blocks, but then Ospreay tries another one, finally hits the Os cutter, only gets a 2 count. And Ospreay counters a world's strongest slam with an inside cradle, takes a inside out lariat, and then a twisting slam off of the turnbuckle. Hobbs gets the 2 count, and then Ospreay climbs to the top and hits his leap of faith and rocks Hobbs coming down here. I mean, this, the announcers immediately call attention to it, and Hobbs had that look of like when a fighter gets like knocked down and they're just stiff, and Ospreay just retreats to the corner. The ref is checking on Hobbs, and they finish with the hidden blade, and you can see Ospreay like communicating with Hobbs, who looked like he was rocked here, and pins Hobbs for the win. And I mean, Hobbs, they took him to the floor. It looked like they checked on him, but then he got involved with like the post-match stuff. He was getting into Ospreay's face, and then they end up going their separate ways. But yeah, it was concerning finish.
Yeah, the margin of error with a dive like that is, like this, it's very, very difficult to land perfectly. And looks like Hobbs was okay. We certainly hope he is. I thought the match itself was a good match. maybe in comparison to Ospreay's recent outings, which have been spectacular against both Shibata and Takeshita, this might have been a little bit more pedestrian, but it's hard to maybe expect that quality every single time that he's out there. I thought the match served to like continue to showcase Ospreay as like a really your next in line top level baby face in this company, because I think he's almost like right there where I would slot him right behind Swerve at this point when we're talking about baby faces on the show. You know, there really aren't too many other baby faces right now who feel as central to me as a Will Ospreay. I don't really consider the BCC baby faces just because like they kind of go back and forth. I mean, somebody like an Eddie Kingston is at this point more of a upper mid Carter. But Ospreay to me really does feel like a main eventer, or at least a main character right now on this show.
One thing I wish they did on this show, and you bring up the BCC, and Danielson comes out as Ospreay is exiting. So we have the two ships crossing in the night as they pass one another. I really wish they had some highlight of Friday night at Arena Mexico and a sold out crowd losing their minds. You know, it's like, you don't even have to show the finish if you don't want to show the BCC losing, but it's like, hey, here are some of our guys performing in Mexico. We don't have borders here in AEW, and some of the world's best were watching, where fans got to see some of the world's best on Friday night. Because that's a great visual that you have of that crowd that was electric. The opposite, I would say, of this crowd in Worcester.
I thought maybe they might have suffered from the same thing as last week, where it might have just been too cavernous of a building for 3,000 people. Because I believe for concerts it holds something like 15,000. It's
a big building, and I'm afraid. Well, I don't know if they'll sweeten things, but they're doing Collision right after this Dynamite, and there was, when I was watching the picture-in-picture during Thunder Rosa and Mariah May during the commercial, I cannot remember hearing such a silent response. It was eerie how quiet it was, because the announcers were kind of just like laying out, so they weren't even talking. I was like, it is so quiet. Which we had some moments here. Bryan Danielson and Lance Archer. So for this match, Danielson gave Lance Archer most of this match. Archer just destroyed him. And Danielson is trying to fight back with leg kicks and going after the knee of Lance Archer. And then Archer drops Danielson on the floor and takes one of the production guys and slams him on top of Danielson. And we learned that was Jim. That was Jim McGillicuddy.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we lost Jim here in the midst of this attack by Lance Archer. So Jim was taken.
Would a production assistant count as illegal object to use against somebody?
Obviously not, because the match went, and we do know that DQs are being readily enforced on this show. So Danielson tries for a guillotine, moves to the label lock, but Archer manages to get to the rope, and then it's Danielson lighting him up with kicks, gets hit with a choke slam, stops the blackout, and does a step up. Archer hits a step up knee and goes for the blackout again. And Danielson slides on the back to a rear naked choke. He's flipped off and then lands the Busaiku knee. Archer's down to a knee and lands these three big head kicks and one final Busaiku for the win.
I thought it was an enjoyable match. It was a lot of fun seeing Danielson work against a giant. You know, his AEW matches tend to be against like mainly guys that are his size, and maybe that's just what the company offers. But it almost at this point kind of feels novel to see him work these giants as an underdog, because back in his WWE run that would happen a lot more often. So it was a nice little showcase match. It was ahead of the Ospreay match at Dynasty.
Yeah, the audience was up and down for this one. It was not like they were out of it. It did feel as though it went lengthy for this audience that, I think a hotter crowd would have enhanced this.
Sure, yeah. I mean, these are like lengthy matches, which, they've kind of, AEW has made their name on, but they don't really have any relevance. The results don't have any relevance. You kind of know what's happening. Like they're essentially showcase matches, but long.
Renee brings out Jericho, and he calls out Hook and says about the line last week where Hook's comment about knowing who Chris Jericho really is. And he agrees and says, when you're operating at the highest level, it's different rules. And there were a lot of boos here for Chris Jericho. And he says he's not asking for Hook to trust him 100%. Just believe in me as much as I believe in you. And Hook is like, okay, yeah. Well, I believe in you so much. I got us a match on Collision, but I'm going to keep my eyes on you. And Jericho responds, bet.
Yes. How are you enjoying this build so far?
I'm waiting for this to escalate. I
Hmm.
don't know. It's the chemistry has not quite clicked yet. I'm not saying it won't. It's an odd pairing at the moment.
Yeah. So I guess we had clarification now. Jericho is not going to be a manager.
He called himself a mentor at the beginning of this.
Okay, but they're continuing the tag team, so I guess he's mentoring while being in a tag team with Hook.
Sure. Yes.
Whatever. Almost doesn't really matter. They're very clearly teasing a Jericho heel turn here. Like he even, had
almost too much, I would say. Like the
Yeah.
audience is already there.
Well, they could swerve us, I guess, and have Hook turn on Jericho. I mean, that's always possible.
He'll get cheered.
Yeah, who knows? But I mean, it's time for a Jericho heel turn. It's been a long time, I think, for it's probably the right role for him. They are teasing it. They're just kind of making us wait for it at this point. The interactions thus far have been so minimal, that there's really not much to say about it. And maybe it needs to move a little bit faster. Maybe that's what Collision is.
And their opponents are going to be Shane Taylor and Lee Moriarty, who answered the challenge, and that's set for Saturday. Then it was time for Jay White against Daddy Ass. Daddy Ass, the victim of a home invasion by the Bang Bang Gang on Rampage last Friday. A memorable piece of television.
Oh, man. Did you see it? The home
Yes.
invasion? Was it a good home invasion?
No.
Oh, okay. Of the home invasions, was it a top 10 even?
No. It was a bottom end.
Oh,
They came in. The Guns just opened the door because they have a key to his place. So they get in, and then they're throwing his protein powder into the garbage. And that was the big they didn't break anything. They didn't do anything. And then Billy and his wife show up, and they just leave. They run out the back, and he's like, "What the hell?"
how nice of them to actually throw it into the garbage rather than
He
on the floor.
didn't even throw it into the wrong recycling bin or anything, or on the ground for them to have to clean it up later. It was
Probably expired anyway.
Well, as did my interest in this match. So
Man, this one.
Part of me thought by the end of this that they thought, it'd be so funny. Phil and his 5-star criticisms, we're going to show him.
See, we're not a 5-star. We're not a promotion that only cares about 5-star
I literally
matches.
thought these guys were out here to have the worst match in Dynamite history.
This was this was an unusual match for AEW period.
Dude, it was 11 minutes and 41 seconds of Billy Gunn in a singles match.
Mhm.
He's 60.
It's unusual because the standard of quality in AEW is so high when it comes to in-ring wrestling that even the most nothing, AEW Rampage match would have had way more substance and way much better layout than something like this.
People can rag on Rampage that it's not essential viewing, but that's an entertaining hour of television. If you just want some great wrestling matches, I enjoy that show most weeks. It's entertaining stuff. Billy Gunn would not be able to cut it on Rampage. It was also the layout of this match.
Mm-hmm.
So it was comical, the level of Jay White having to sell for this guy, and he's doing this over the top selling, all the old 80s crawling and feigning he's in fear of the 60-year-old man Billy Gunn, who's just giving him the most bare bones offense. Excalibur is called, it's the unadulterated Billy Gunn tonight, and you're watching him with these forearms that, he went into the post. I don't think a child would have been affected by this clothesline that went into the post. They go through the crowd. So apparently there were no countouts to this. White's begging off.
No. There were. It was just that Aubrey was counting comically slow. The announcers even called it out at one point. Where they were breaking the count at one point, and then they just kind of didn't for what felt like minutes, and then Aubrey would just all of a sudden continue 7, And then like it made Aubrey look terrible.
Like, honestly, this belonged on spring break.
I don't know about that.
Well, it belonged somewhere, and maybe just not on my television set on Wednesday night. But I mean, the Acclaimed and the Guns are shown backstage, and Gunn misses in the corner. White's fighting back. This is after like selling, I'm not kidding, for like 8 minutes in succession. And the Acclaimed are laid out backstage. So Jay White eye gouges him, sends Gunn into the post, and then Billy still overcomes the Blade Runner and hits the one and only as both men are down. Gunn hits a famouser, but instead of going for the pin, he poses to the crowd and then puts up his arms and just right there on live television, suck my dick. And then it's another famouser. That's not enough. He goes to get a chair. And then the Guns come down to protect Jay White from the chair shot. And then in plain view of Aubrey, Jay White low blows Billy Gunn. And like throughout all this selling, I'm just thinking, man, this is like Jay White's going to get this win, but they're going to give this whole match to Billy Gunn. And I think it's still an awful layout, but that's what they're going to do here. They do a DQ finish at 11:41. I could not believe that this was our ending to this god-awful match. The Acclaimed run out. They toss out the Bang Bang Gang, and then they just beat the shit out of Bang Bang Gang to the point that they're about to put them through the desk. But because we're doing a double taping, they've got to remove both panels. So we see the Dynamite panel come off, the Collision panel come off. Like, this is such a comedy of errors. And then they go to suplex White through the desk when the Guns rescue them. I can tell you, I have no interest in seeing any of these matches involving these six again. This was one of the worst matches, I think, in Dynamite's history. I hated this with such a degree. It's going on my end of year list.
I think because it's AEW and because we're so used to a high standard of quality of it, especially on Dynamite, which is like your A-level show, this really does stand out. This felt like a standard match in terms of style from like the 80s WWF, in that it was incredibly slow. But except unlike the TV matches back then, this went 12 minutes. And 80% of it was Billy Gunn very gingerly leading Jay White through a leisurely stroll, through the crowd, doing nothing. I thought Aubrey's outrageous slow counting that the announcers even called out made her look awful. Then you had your lazy and cliche like distraction DQ, low blow, bullshit finish, and a cutaway to the back with the Acclaim that really served no purpose. Like, they showed them laid out, but the Acclaim came out and like made the save anyway. Like,
they didn't sell any of the attack. Like, there were so many examples in this match that it felt like they were actively trying to just hijack this thing.
That can't be possible. But it was that bad. Oh. I
just don't understand how this was produced as this was the Phantom attack backstage, and then you're not selling any of it. It's like the cliche DQ that they've been so reticent to try. I know they've done a few of late, but I mean, this was just the most egregious one that just screamed, let's get out of this match with as unsatisfying a finish as possible. And at the end of it, man, did you want to see this 6-man? No. I don't.
No, not at all. Well, I also didn't see the home invasion. Maybe that'll change my mind.
Well, this match invaded my home on Wednesday. Awful match. Renee brings out Willow Nightingale, Chris Statlander, and Stokely Hathaway. And for several of the segments, like, we got more of Renee doing the interviews on the stage as opposed to backstage, which I'm more in favor of doing in front of the crowd. I do find it awkward where their back is towards the crowd, such as these three were. What did you think?
Well, this is the classic, WWE like 80s shot, isn't it? Your back's towards the crowd, you get that beautiful depth, and you get the a great looking crowd. This is probably all 3,000 people, by the way, in the singular view. Anyway, I mean, I like it. I like it for the fact that the simple fact that you're getting out of the backstage area for somebody like Willow, who I think we've seen, it's not like we haven't seen Willow speak. It's not like we haven't even seen her speak on Dynamite. But the times we have seen Willow speak, they're in short little like 30-second backstage things that are completely forgettable. This allows her to at least engage with the audience. It allows her to kind of play it back and forth with the audience. And she has a very organic connection that like they really have not, I think, showcased, all that well during her time at all in this company. This at least allowed that. So I mean, because I've seen it for so long, like, during the WWF's like, 80s/early 90s run, it didn't feel unusual to me. In fact, I kind of enjoyed it.
Well, Willow did a great promo here, and this was the crowd to do it for, because she talks about her history in this town, going up and down the road many times with Chris Statlander. And I wrestled at the White Eagle. And man, we clearly had 3,000 Beyond Wrestling fans here because they went nuts for the White Eagle. And she questioned if a girl like her belonged in wrestling, but it was your cheers that reassured me, helped me blossom into the woman I am tonight, who will go on to challenge Julia Hart. And through that confidence, I know I can become the smiling face of TBS. And this crowd was going, like, this was one of the bigger responses on the show. As I said, this was not the most lively crowd, but for the Swerve segment and for Willow, they were really into these baby faces on this show. And I thought this was a great promo from Willow. And then Stokely put over the match last week and put over Willow. Before we get to Mercedes interruption, Willow's promo.
I thought she sounded great. Again, like, I think it's a long time coming, like, for us to actually see Willow cut a substantial promo about like who she is, and just, showcasing a bit of that sort of underdog spirit that I think for whatever, like, she's over in spite of not really having this type of promo time. So now that she's actually getting to speak and she's sounding pretty good at doing it, I really feel like this is sort of the key to unlocking, her to the next level. Please continue the recap.
Mercedes is out, and she gets a big reaction as well, being here in Massachusetts, and she wants the winner of the match at Dynasty and says, in Vegas, money changes everything. So we've pretty much set up the next two pay-per-views for the TBS title, where Mercedes is not going to wrestle till Double or Nothing. So that would suggest that she is probably not cleared yet for a match if they're holding off until May. Like, we're talking,
she has done physicality though.
He has done physicality, hasn't done a full match. So I don't know, like, why else you'd be holding off for so long for her.
Well, Tony also held off like Adam Copeland from a recent pay-per-view, didn't he?
I mean, that was for a strategic reason, though, putting that match in Toronto as opposed to
this have been strategy, like, I don't, for whatever reason, like, are we going to see Mercedes wrestle before this title match?
Well, I'll tell you this: doing these weekly appearances, like, I think this
not helping her
as well is going to run dry. I would say, like, if she is not able to wrestle until the end of May, like, that's I would, and quite frankly, for a big pay-per-view match, I think you would want her to have a few TV matches, because that'll be a full year by the time she gets, over a year by the time we get to Double or Nothing, if that's her first match back.
Yeah. Just maybe speaking about like these TV appearances thus far, I really, really hope Mercedes has been working hard to improve her promo ability, which I think in AEW, maybe contrary to popular belief, like, are probably going to be more difficult for her, and more important for her, I would say, than even in the WWE, where she has a lot of these things maybe sort of set up for her. I don't know what's been going on, but like, in the 3 weeks we've seen her, she really has not hit the notes that I think, to me, are required of somebody of her hype. And I think her star power, she needs to be delivering like stronger than what she has. Tonight just kind of felt like a very cookie cutter, like, like, what is it, like, computer generated, I'm gonna be challenging the winner, and that was it. I mean, it was simple and it was fine, but I think she needs to give something a bit more substantial. I'm not asking her to be Will Ospreay, okay? There's a guy like who really kind of has exceeded everybody's expectations.
Could you imagine that 5 years ago? So I'm not asking her to be Will Ospreay on promos.
But Will Ospreay has made a difference even without wrestling. His in-ring experience, appearances, just speaking on the microphone, have elevated his stock to the point where even wrestling tonight felt less important than him cutting a promo. Mercedes needs to get to that level quick, or at least close to it.
The Young Bucks against Orange Cassidy and Trent Beretta in the semifinals of the tag title tournament. Matt gets on commentary and throws to the picture-in-picture break. And so Orange Cassidy attempts a double Rana, which is blocked, and then they feint and hit him with a DDT. Trent is out on the floor after they took off the turnbuckle pad, and they're holding Orange in place for the EVP trigger, delivering the weak kicks to mock Orange when they go for the trigger, and Orange ducks, so they crash knees, and Orange does his big comeback with satellite DDTs. Cassidy and Trent manage the spike pile driver. Nick is in for the save. They do a soul food into the half and half and hug in the center. And we should also mention that Sue brought them to the arena. So Sue and Chuck Taylor are in the corner of the best friends. Matt stops the Dude Buster with a super kick into the code red. And then Matt goes on this super kick spree, taking out Chuck Taylor, and then holds up before he's about to super kick Sue. This was a great spot in the match, and the crowd came alive at the idea that he was going to super kick Sue. And he goes to offer his fist, and instead of saying bet, Sue responded with the lightest slap I have ever seen. She was not going to injure Matt under any circumstances.
I wonder if this nice lady has ever slapped anybody. Hard to imagine.
You know what she probably was thinking about? She probably just read Ronda Rousey's book, and Ronda was very open about her concussion issues and the fact that even when Stephanie would slap her, she would like get her bell rung. And maybe Sue was being subconscious here about what if Matt has concussion issues and I'm not going to contribute to this. This was her public stance against power slap. But this was a fun spot here with Sue. And then we get an orange punch delivered to Matt, followed by a knee strike. And man, did this crowd buy that the best friends were going to win this. I thought that was a great setup for a near fall. They hit a strong zero with the stomp. Nick is in for the save. And then Sue gives Trent a kiss on the cheek for him to power up. But Matt then catapults Trent into the exposed buckle and rolls him up, grabbing the tights in 12:28 as the Bucks advance to the final. And Trent is looking, just can't believe what's happened. So Chuck Taylor's in the ring, and the best friends are left there wallowing in this loss, and they each go to their respective corner for the group hug. And Trent runs at Orange Cassidy and takes him out with a knee. Just awesome spot here, and leaves to the back, leaves Chuck Taylor behind, leaves Orange Cassidy behind, but most importantly, he leaves Sue.
Yes, leaves his mom. How's he going to get home?
Man,
is he taking the van too? That'd be a real heel.
Oh, that would be something.
Yeah.
They've teased this. This was not out of nowhere. And
okay, yes, you're right.
What?
When did they tease it though?
Before the tournament. They had been doing plenty of these teases where Orange
how
Cassidy...
long before the tournament? Because for me, it's been a long time. And to me, it's been too long that they've teased, tension within the best friends, and then you have Trent teasing, and then they make that up, and then
they were winning.
Yeah, I guess were they actually ramping up this tension that much before this tournament itself?
I mean, if you go back to all those backstage segments and Orange Cassidy giving other people title shots over Trent or telling the best friends to stay in the back, I've got this. I mean, yeah, they going into this tournament, we had even talked about this being the time to do.
We've been talking about this for I feel like a year plus. That's my point is that it's not that they didn't tease it, it's that they've dragged it out for so long that I almost have kind of lost interest. So I'm glad they're finally executing it, but I almost feel like the timing was after Trent just came back from neck surgery and had some of those great matches. I feel a lot of the luster is kind of off, but I mean, we haven't really seen Trent in a focused storyline. I don't know if we ever have in AEW, or at least I don't know about anything notable. I'm happy to see it. I'm happy we're finally getting it, because he kind of has nothing to accomplish within this faction. It's good for Orange Cassidy, and it's going to be great for Trent.
Mariah May against Thunder Rosa. Tony Storm was on commentary, and that was the where the attention was for most of this. She informed Taz that she really doesn't think that orange suits him. He's more of a coral type. They're trading forearms. Tony says that Mariah May reminds me of a young Tony Storm, while Thunder Rosa reminds me of an older Thunder Rosa. And then Thunder Rosa misses a double stomp. May hits the running knee for a 2 count, goes for the Mayday, but it's countered with a roll up, and then tries another Mayday, and it's stopped with a backstabber and sets up the Tijuana bomb. And Thunder Rosa wins in 8:43. And then we had like the funniest moment. Thunder Rosa is getting into Tony Storm's face. She's like, I want the title match now. I want this now. And as she's calling for the match now, the graphic comes up for Dynasty on April 21st. It was just very bizarre.
Well, she's really amped up, and she doesn't want to wait 3 weeks.
I'm sorry, we got a contract signing. We just don't have a slot for this tonight. So anyway, another match for the pay-per-view. Match was all right. It had no heat.
Tough spot on the card. I think it feels like a more substantial, like it feels like a good pay-per-view worthy match. Like, people really like Tony Storm. Obviously, people really like Thunder Rosa. They're two of your more popular stars in the division, and I hope that they're able to increase the heat a little bit. I think they've done a decent job so far. Like Rosa, she's really fun to watch taunting Tony Storm, Antonia, I should say. And Tony Storm, I thought, was hilarious on commentary. So
she had some very good lines in this. Like, she was cracking up the other announcers. It's interesting. You do have that. You're going way back with the story, but remember that Tony Storm was that interim champion when Thunder Rosa was hurt, and then got promoted to main champion. It's just the current character really doesn't lend itself to that kind of backstory involving them. I think it's more so going to be Tony Storm playing the character and Thunder Rosa kind of being like the baby face that's challenging the cult baby face.
Yeah.
Penta announces that he wants to face Adam Copeland next week on Dynamite, and done.
Very fast, the people who work there. I think it's very clear, like, Penta has been working on his English promo. I thought he sounded really good here, so
I'm sure Abrahantes doesn't want him to get too good with his English promos.
Right, yeah. But Penta's another one that, like, he's kind of like a Trent, where, like, he's been here since day one, but has he ever really received a substantial storyline? And I think for Penta, maybe the holdback is the ability to promo, perhaps, and to tell those stories. So maybe this, I'm happy to see the improvement.
So announced for Collision, which again is being taped as we speak. We've got Penta against Commander and Jericho and Hook against Shane Taylor and Lee Moriarty. So that is the Saturday night after the NCAA game and after WrestleMania. Yes. Yeah. So I don't know how well this show is going to do. I know it has the lead in with the basketball game, but I mean, we've got 2 matches announced so far, and I don't know if people are. It's a long day of wrestling for many fans.
Going head to head with the press conference, probably.
Yeah, probably at that time. And then the final segment, it's Tony Schiavone hosting the contract signing with Samoa Joe and Swerve. Joe explains that by signing this contract, it is doom and destruction. It's a career-defining mistake for you to step into the ring with me right now. I'm going to leave you mentally scarred like you left Diddy's party too late. And man, did this register with that crowd. Swerve says he's dreamed of this opportunity. I've had a lot of obstacles and roadblocks, but we are building a dynasty in AEW, mentioning all the signings. And then we got an MJF chant. And Joe, you're a killer, but so am I. And I'm going to show you that I'm every bit that man. And then drills Joe, but Joe comes back and nails him with the chain and lights this dude up with a million shots in the corner. And Swerve is bleeding a ton. And he leaves him busted open in the ring. Joe leaves, but then Swerve crawls to the mic laughing and says, I love this shit. And if that's all you've got, I'm taking your title. And he wipes the pen into his blood and signs the contract as Joe returns and kicks him in the balls and puts him through the table with a Uranagi. Pretty good segment. And the crowd was very into this.
Yeah, really, really good segment, I thought. As far as like contract signings go, I mean, I thought both men looked and sounded really cool. And you had a big, like, incredible, like, visually, I don't know, attention grabbing type of close here with Swerve signing his contract in blood. It felt really hot to me, and almost so hot that like I hope they have better stuff to follow this for the next 2 weeks, because we're 2.5 weeks away from this pay-per-view, and this already feels like it's a hot enough program for us to go to the match this weekend. So I hope they have good stuff to not just maybe keep this thing alive, but to increase the attention.
Yeah, it was strange that here we had a contract signing at the end of the show, and I would say that at least this ended on a high note. I didn't hate this episode, but man, there was that Jay White Billy Gunn match did a number on me, and I kind of felt like it was a show that was certainly to me affected by the crowd being out of it. And I don't even look at like the crowd as being like that's just how they reacted. And the first two matches, like there was some very good stuff, like wrestling wise on the show, and the tag match, you got the turn with Trent. So there was significant stuff on the show. I don't think this was a awful show, but it did have some stuff here that was just, to me, like really dreadful by Dynamite standards, mainly contained to that match.
I think having a match that bad,
it soured the whole show on me.
Really does drag maybe the entire experience down, because again, it's a testament to AEW that throughout their 5-year history, you don't have too many, if any, matches like that to speak about on a Dynamite. So the fact that like we did get one like that, will last in your memory, at least immediately after the show. But beyond that, like there weren't any like great matches that I think we could speak of on this show. Like there were good matches. Ospreay versus Hobbs was a good match. I thought Archer versus Danielson was a good match. Best Friends versus Bucks was a good match. But we've had great matches. We're used to, at this point, great Will Ospreay matches once a week.
The contract signing is what's going to stand out for me on the show. Like that's going to be the biggest takeaway from the show, I thought. And the turn by Trent, I thought was really well done.
Sure, but like we're used to Eddie Kingston versus Kazuchika Okada, followed by Adam Copeland versus Christian Cage. We're used to that level of quality. You couple I would say a pretty mediocre card with another unfortunately weak sounding crowd, whether due to just volume and venue or energy. It unfortunately amounts to what felt like a very rather lackluster experience while watching this show.
All right, so there you go. That was Dynamite, and we will now open it up to you. We have some feedback here on the forum, and if you have your super chats, you're welcome to submit them as well.
Yeah, let's go to some super chats here. We got Matthew Yanes, who sends $2 just to say safe travels to WrestleMania weekend. Thank you, Matthew.
Might be Yanez.
Oh, is that how you say it?
I'm guessing.
Yanez, Yanez.
There's a fighter who that's how they pronounce their. But thank you, Matthew.
Apologies
regardless of pronunciation.
Butchered your name. Well, how about this one? Dickie Baird.
Dickie Baird
Sends a super chat to say, just sat down in LAX ready for my next flight. Appreciate the show as it helps me translate what time it is back home. See you soon. I have presents. Oh, lovely. Well, you're already giving us a present in the form of a 20% sale across all merchandise over at chop-tees.com. Are you aware of this, John? Did you know?
Please tell me every detail.
20% off all merch right now at chop-tees.com, including post-wrestling t-shirts, Poison Rana t-shirts, WrestleNomics t-shirts. Support your favorite journalists here. And beyond that, stackable deals, John. So that means if you get multiple shirts, you get more off. That's how it works. Buy more, save more money. Welcome to capitalism. Welcome to smart commerce. Up to 50% off, I believe, if you buy enough. So
is Dickie just giving this stuff away?
Practically, yeah. So he's gone nuts, everybody. Chop-tees.com. Get your t-shirts. Support your favorite podcasters.
All right. We'll see Dickie in Philadelphia. All right, onto the forum we go. Rob from Texas. The opening promo by Copeland was a strange way to start the show. The fact that the audience didn't seem to know exactly what Copeland was referring to and had a quiet reaction to the start of the promo is actually a nice reminder that we don't all live on Twitter listening to shoot interviews. I'll say on that part that even if you didn't know what he was talking about, I think people can still get into the spirit of the message that he was delivering. Like, it wasn't all references to the interview or different, like, it was a response to it, but it was also this, hey, we've got great wrestling. I love being here. We have awesome wrestlers. I think like it was enough that it was not like excluding people that may have been tuning in and had no idea what he was referring to.
Perhaps, yeah. Now, could you have done it just even without the explaining? There's been a lot of negativity online. Like, could you have cut that out and still delivered this message?
Yeah, you could have. And I think people would have known what this was a response to without necessarily calling it out. But I mean, it was what it was. Like, it was a response to the interview. And I think there were enough people that knew exactly, like, this was not some insignificant interview. A lot of people were aware of this.
And you can argue, like, going back to what Punk was saying, maybe this is the audience that AEW is playing to, the audience that is aware of everything that goes on off the television. So if you're going by, the Kenny Omega Vikingo metric, yeah, sure, everybody would have known.
He says, overall, the matches were pretty good on the show. I'm always happy to see North Texas native Lance Archer get TV time against Danielson, no less. Archer's has always seemed to me like he could be a good fit for the Blackpool Combat Club as a physical, violent wrestler.
I'm sure he would love that. I'm sure he would love that a lot more than being a part of the Righteous. Okay.
Where was Jake tonight? I wanted a Bryan Danielson, Jake Roberts interaction.
I don't know. Good question. Didn't make the trip out to Worcester. He's probably going to be in Philly. He's probably going to do some autograph signings, I'd bet. Okay, Benjamin says, great show. Copeland's promo was wonderful. Non-defensive in defense of AEW and genuine. Okay, so there's a counterpoint here. I am enjoying seeing talents get the mic. This show seemed to have a bit of promo and helped make Willow more defined as a character. Swerve and Joe's segment was amazing. I'm glad Trent finally turned. It's much needed. May and Rosa had a good match, and I'm looking forward to seeing Rosa and Tony at Dynasty. I watched Punk's interview, and I felt he was candid without being totally scorched earth. Most of the media pickup I've seen has over-amplified it all, of course, so I see why AEW had Adam Copeland out to address directly/indirectly. Read WWE and Netflix. The interview snippet you posted in the story is what I thought was key in making the deal. WWE historically handles their own production, but they also develop the network, and that infrastructure positions them uniquely to serve content without needing any production investment from a streaming partner. More so than any broadcast network like NBC or Fox, Netflix gives WWE global reach with less content restrictions and gatekeeping. SmackDown moving to NBC and USA seems like a money deal, and also to keep a presence in the broadcast space. In contrast for AEW, and I'm not saying they should already have all of this built, but it's an impediment in serving their audiences and hinders their options in partner shopping when it's time for them to negotiate. I feel like this was a feedback reserved more for Pollock and Thurston on Wednesday. But do you have any thoughts on what Ben has to say here about the Netflix deal?
I mean, AEW is in control of their own production as well. WWE, I mean, that's a big, it's a big aspect of both WWE and UFC in that they control the production. And that's not the case for a lot of major sports leagues where it's the network that controls that broadcast, and they appoint the broadcasters. And with WWE, it's like they package it, they shoot it, they handle it, and it's a selling feature for them. And Nick Khan brought that up in the interview today on The Town as well. Andrew from Cape Breton. I like the Raw speech at the start of the show. The CM Punk stuff has been litigated to death, and it felt like AEW wanted to move on from everything. I also like AEW style Raw speeches compared to WWE ones where poor Titus O'Neil is thrown out there to talk about how non-political WWE is. Yeah, that was what a unfortunate individual Titus O'Neil had to be in that situation on Raw. The show again is good. Despite the weird criticism, every match had a story and built towards the pay-per-view, and that Willow promo showed why she might be one of the best baby faces in wrestling. I was enjoying the Billy Gunn Jay White match until it started to go a bit long and ended in a DQ, but the crowd loved it. I don't know about this. I can't say that was the case for Chris Jericho, who seems to be getting the dreaded X-Pac heat at this point in his career. It's sad. Jericho's one of the biggest stars in wrestling history, and unlike the many old guys in AEW, his career seems to be ending with a whimper. He needs to be off television for his own good.
Let's go to Curtis from the 519, who says, after attending Collision this past Saturday, I thought this was another good output by AEW in a year that has been filled with them. While not their greatest show ever by any means, AEW has been on a roll of good TV to kick off 2024. The Copeland promo was a great reminder of how good he can be on the mic and really set a nice tone for the evening. With that being said, I think AEW needs to hush a little about how great they are and continue to show fans how good they are. I don't need the Blue Jays to constantly remind me how bad they are. I just watch the product and figure that out for myself. I think AEW needs to follow a similar idea of don't tell me how great the product is, show me. Yeah. That would be unique for the Blue Jays, like, to grab the microphone and announce to the Rogers Center, we're awful before playing a game. I have many thoughts on the Jay White Billy Gunn match, but in short, absolutely embarrassing booking. What should have been an ass kicking by Jay turned into a shit show of a match. I'm sure Way will have lots to say about this. Question: typically around this time of year, AEW begins to build their summer blood and guts match. There is no obvious factions or feuds for this match as we speak. Do you think AEW begins to build for another summer blood and guts, or do you think they save the match for when the feud calls for it, rather than meet a yearly quota, i.e. Hell in a Cell pay-per-view? I could see maybe a BCC versus CMLL feud peaking there, but outside of that, there is no obvious direction towards the match.
Certainly more towards the former, is like when the feud calls for it. I'm not a fan of, well, it's July, we're doing blood and guts. Yeah, when there is a program that is built up enough and calls for it, then great. But I don't think you have to force that in. You don't want to water down a gimmick like that has worked when it comes to drawing. It was in Boston last year, and they did like 9,000 tickets for that show.
Right. Now, do they have to like plan anything in advance as relates to like the size of venue or the type of venue, like from what you can recall? Like, I
mean, they did it at the TD Garden, as I recall, last year. I don't know specifics about.
I mean, they're booking like these 15,000 seaters anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they're running big buildings. Yeah, probably too big. And next one is from Muggin. A rather up and down episode. Copeland's rallying promo was strong, despite it reeking of damage control. The wrestling was reliably good. Willow's promo was good. And is AEW going to hold out on Mercy's first match until Vegas? Mercy. I'd like to
Mercedes.
Yeah, I know. I'd like to think that she'd work a match prior to Double or Nothing, because if she's going to cut promos for weeks, it's going to get old fast. Jay White is stuck in mid-card hell. The Acclaimed are pretty cold as an act.
Oh man, tonight didn't help them, certainly, and it wasn't the Acclaim's fault. Really loved Willow's promo. Good luck to everyone who plans on watching as much wrestling as they can this week. I've just finished watching Tournament of Breath, which saw Speedball Mike Bailey lose 3 consecutive matches. Which performers do you guys have your eyes on this week?
I said Masha Slamovich. I just pulling this up here. So she's got the match at Bloodsport with Shayna Baszler. Later that night, she's facing Shuri. Then the next day at Wrestling Revolver, she's taking on Speedball Mike Bailey. At Joey Janela's Spring Break, she's teaming with Rina Yamashita against Minoru Suzuki and Masato Tanaka. And then she's on the GCW Tokyo Joshi Pro Show with Maki Ito and Rina Yamashita against Yuki Aino, Miyu Yamashita, and Shoko Nakajima. So, I mean, those are 5 matches. She might have more, but those are the 5 listed. And I think she could have a great weekend.
Yeah, to be quite honest, I haven't really dove into a lot of these cards to really have any standouts. I feel like I'm already treading water just with the shows that I have to cover. So I'll wait to hear who the standouts are.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for
one more piece of feedback here from Annie, who says, I've thoroughly enjoyed Dynamite in 2024, but this wasn't a great episode. The Edge promo with the background of the cuts felt dissonant, especially since it was designed as a retort to Punk. I didn't care much for much outside the opening match in Willow's promo. The closing angle made Joe look like a badass, but I was made to cringe by his Diddy line, which trivialized the trauma of others and was in poor taste.
Yeah, I mean, I know just the bare bones of the whole Diddy story. I can imagine people being somewhat offended by that line. I don't know all the specifics about it, but I mean, it certainly drew a gasp from the crowd that he brought that up as well. Okay, well, thank you everyone for tuning in. We will be speaking with you in Philadelphia in the days to come. So In the meantime, you can go catch Pollock and Thurston from earlier today. And up next on Tuesday with Braden, Davey, and their special in-studio guest, Stephanie Chase, who was on the show. They did a Mania preview and going through the final NXT, which WrestleTix is noting they're at over 13,000 tickets for that show on Tuesday. So this is going to be the biggest NXT show of this era, and you would have to be going back to like peak Black and Gold days of them doing a number like this. So that's a huge accomplishment for that brand. As much as we look at this idea of WWE doing 2 shows in one day,
they could do 5 shows in a day and probably do well at this point. Like everything is.
I don't know about that one, but
trust me, we're gonna approach that day.
When do we get 2 nights of NXT? We get Stand and Deliver.
Yeah, sure. And you can only stand for Stand. You know, there are no seats.
Yes.
Oh, it's coming, John. Trust me. Okay. More. Okay, we're out of days out of the week. Let's do 2 shows out of the day. We're out of weeks. Let's just add more hours in the time space continuum. Yeah, it's crazy, but like SmackDown is sold out with the Hall of Fame, isn't it? Or near sellout, right?
Almost. It will be. Yeah, like they're pretty much. I think Raw and SmackDown, they're just a couple tickets remaining. Like those will be full, and both nights of Mania are at about 60-61 between the 2 nights.
So what's your opinion? Does this WrestleMania break any records? I don't even know what the metric is at this point, but are we talking like all-time gate record beating 32?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's very much in play.
Are we talking 2 nights combined or a single night beating 32?
Brandon was of the impression that like each night could beat it.
Wow.
Which would be very, very impressive, and would tell you like what the tickets were scaled at to be able to do that with
inflation math in there as well.
Yeah, that's true. We are talking 8 years removed from the gate record, which was $17.3 million in 2016. So the move to 2 nights, they're going to be doing 3 nights before we know it. So when will we be probably checking in next on the cafe? What is our plan?
I think I would say we should try to record something after the Mark Hitchcock show Thursday night. So maybe
it's a 7 p.m. show, and I don't think it's going to be some like marathon length show. I think we'll be out of there at a totally reasonable time.
We also have a really busy Friday morning, so I don't know if we'd have any time then to record.
True. Okay, so we're going to aim for Thursday night that we'll have a show up. Again, postwrestlingcafe.com. The free shows this weekend will be after both nights of WrestleMania. Time to be determined. They might be exceptionally late, but they will be there when you wake up the next morning.
Even that, I think, is to be determined.
Okay. Yeah.
They'll
come at some point, okay?
If we get home at like 4 a.m., like I don't know if I have it in me to record like a 2-hour review until the next day. But we will get it up eventually. Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay. This might be the end of me, this trip. But all of that is coming up. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. And that concludes Rewind to Dynamite.